right, I'm Chris Avina with American Outdoor News, and today we have the founder and host of Mac Outdoors. She is an outdoor writer, a podcaster. She sits on multiple boards and committees for SCI, Colorado delegate for DC Project, and just a great champion for the outdoor lifestyle. Please welcome Mia Anstine. Mia, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you virtually since we haven't been in person in a while.
About 2 years. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, we know each other, God, it has to be like 10 years. And I have to say, it really has been an experience, an enjoyable experience, watching you grow in the industry, because you were kind of like the go-to girl. You were always available for everything. You don't say no. How do you do it?
I do say no. For people in the industry, and especially people who need to be mentored, I always say I'm a mentor, but I try to be available for people who have questions or need help and stuff like that. I always say my door is open, and especially a lot of people say, oh, you're busy, you should close your door and make a schedule and make people make appointments. And even for my family, it's just like, no, if you need to talk, I'm here. Or if friends need something, I'm like, okay, I'm here. And if I need to push back my schedule where I'm writing at midnight, then I write at midnight.
I'm usually asleep by that time. I'm at the gym at 6 a.m. So I need at least my 8 hours of beauty sleep. It hasn't worked, but
well, I try to get my sleep too. I mean, you definitely need it to recuperate and recover from anything. So rest is important.
No,
but
it's not.
I also feel like
I'm Eastern time, and when I'm up at 6, you're up at 4. So yeah. I don't know where you're getting your sleep from.
I go to sleep before the sun goes down. Unless I'm behind on a deadline, then I do what I got to do.
Now, most recently, you got involved with the DC Project.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's pretty topical right now, what's going on with Kyle Rittenhouse and the attacks on the Second Amendment. Tell us about the DC Project.
Yeah, so I've been a part of the DC Project for about 4 or 5 years and have traveled to DC with the women of the DC Project a few times. And before that, I had gone to Capitol Hill to testify for the GOP about the universal background check bills that were in the House at the time, that they actually passed the House the day that I was on Capitol Hill testifying. But because of the Second Amendment and because of my upbringing, really, I understand there's a need for self-defense. There's a need to protect yourself. I live in a rural area. I live pretty far from any first responders showing up. And out here, you have to have a means to protect yourself. I grew up in Southwest Colorado in a little tiny town. And then my parents divorced and I went to San Diego to the city, and that's where I lived. And so I understand both worlds, and in the city as well, you need to be able to protect yourself. And if you can't carry a firearm, you need to learn how to either do hand defense or carry other means, either devices or mace or different things to protect yourself. But I always say, don't just have one way to protect yourself, have multiple. And when I went to Capitol Hill to testify, part of the universal background check law is I can't lend somebody a firearm. In Colorado, we have universal background check laws. Yes. And one of my friends had been attacked and had his throat slit by an illegal immigrant. And his wife ended up having to go back home. That guy had come to their house way out in the middle of nowhere. And she had to go back home, and she didn't have her own firearm, but I also couldn't lend her one. And she had to be there because they have animals to take care of as well. And so it was like, I can't lend this to you without you going to the store and me basically giving you my gun, and legally it's hers then. And I wouldn't be able to get it back if she decided she wanted to keep it. So there's so many nuances with those background check bills. But once on Capitol Hill, I met Shana Rivas, who is a DC Project delegate from Florida. And she kind of showed me around and how to approach legislators there in DC. And that's how I had told Diana Mueller that I wanted to be a part of it, but we just hadn't worked details out quite yet. She had gone 1 year before that or 2 years before that. And so that kind of pulled me into that. And I had always gone to the Capitol here in Colorado, and it's 6.5 hours away from where I live, but I go up there to testify on gun issues and wildlife issues. So it kind of seemed to me like it fits. I mean,
yeah.
I think everybody says, I don't want to get into politics, but it's like, I would encourage your listeners, and like just before we started recording, I encourage you, like, get into teaching, higher education. You can't rely on someone else to do it for you. And that's how I really got started. Was I went for the Sportsman's Day at the Capitol in Colorado. And as I said, I'm 6.5 hours away, and I had heard about this day over the years. Well, I ended up having something to do in Denver. So I was like, hey, while I'm there, I'm going to go join all the sportsmen at the Capitol. And I was pretty excited. And I got there, and there were like 9 of us there.
Wow.
I thought it would be 100, maybe 70, I thought there would be a lot of people there. And there
was a letdown.
Yeah. And that was actually the day I decided, I'm like, I can't rely on someone else to defend my traditions, my heritage, my right to self-defense. And if you go to the Capitol for Second Amendment issues, there are hundreds of moms demand action. And that's kind of what DC Project is, the counter to that, because a lot of people think of gun owners as old men with beards and plaid jackets, and it's like, no, I'm a gun owner. If you want to see what a gun owner looks like, here I am. And I'm an instructor and educator, but I just encourage people, like, don't think that someone's there speaking for you, because there may not be.
And more than likely is not. Now, with this Kyle Rittenhouse, I watched him on Tucker Carlson last night, and this kid is so well-mannered, well-spoken, just an average, everyday kid thrown into a situation where he couldn't have put it better. It was all right to defend ourselves on trial, not Kyle Rittenhouse. And, that really struck a tone. He's well beyond his age.
Right. And he probably was before that happened. And now he's even more because of what he's been subjected to, because it's not like you're innocent until proven guilty. He's guilty until he was proven innocent. And thank goodness he was proven innocent. But there's so many nuances to that story. And we can all say shoulda, coulda, woulda. But also, and as we're just talking about DC Project and Diana Mueller being a retired police officer, I right away think of the police. And like I said, where I live, it's a long ways for a police officer to come and get a bad guy out of my house.
Yeah.
But the police were told to stand down. The police are being defunded everywhere, and all that stuff is going on. So you're in a volatile area. Of course, you want to protect yourself.
Yeah, I personally, I come from a law enforcement family. My father was a police officer, my uncle, my cousin, probably 80% of my friends are. I actually tried to get on myself, but they didn't want me. It was a medical issue, but otherwise. Okay. But so, yeah, I look at things a little differently than most as well. But as a parent, if my son was saying, hey, I'm going to go to this protest, for me, I'm saying, like, hell you are.
Right.
And if he's strapping on a gun and saying, hey, I'm going to a protest, there's no way in hell I'm letting my son leave the house. I don't know. Is it different for you in Colorado?
Like I said, we all have our different personal opinions and stuff, but I'm of the means, like, yes, I am about self-defense, but I'm also one who I will look for the escape route before I'll address a confrontation.
Yeah.
Anywhere I go, I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to be in an area that anyone's aggressive or anything like that. But if I walk into a conference at SHOT Show, I'm like, okay, which way do I go to get out of here? And
It's funny you say that. I do that as well.
you go into a restaurant, okay, we're sitting here, where do I go to get out of here? And that's kind of more my attitude. I had some of my cousins, they live up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and in Coeur d'Alene, all the residents there, initially when all these protests, and they were going from city to city to protest, and in Coeur d'Alene, they all took their guns out and they lined the streets and said, you're not going to riot and destroy our city. And they were there to protect themselves and their businesses. I don't know what the laws are there for protecting your domain or anything like that, but
Yeah.
they went out and did that. Here where I live, some people lined streets in one of the small town. I stayed home. And that's just my personal feeling. Like, yes, I do believe you should do something to protect your rights, but also I try to stay out of situations like that. Like you're saying.
You don't want to put yourself into that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm all about protecting, but also I don't want to be somewhere where I didn't need to be.
It's like being in a bar or a nightclub after midnight. Nothing good happens after midnight.
Right. Yeah, a friend of ours went to DC on January 6th, and he was like, you guys should come. And we were like, no.
No, I'll pass.
Thankfully, he wasn't involved in all the scandal, but it's like he could have been,
Sure,
and
very easy.
That's not something I would have wanted to be involved in,
Yeah. So now you're involved in numerous committees and boards for Safari Club International.
Yep.
I know getting involved as a board member on SCI or DSC, like I'm involved with, that's an initial step. That's how they rope you in. Hey, we got this committee. You want to sit on this committee? And
you know what, though? That's something that I always tell people if they want to be involved and help, just be on a committee. You don't have to be on a board. You can be on a committee and help with the membership drive. You can help with a banquet. You can help with an archery event. I have some friends that love archery and they just help with an archery event. I personally joined SCI, and same with NRA way back in the day. I joined them because they're the organizations that were at the Capitol lobbying for our rights. Yep. And now the NRA is a totally different story, and we could talk about that later if you want to, but SCI they lobby for our hunting rights around the world and help protect that tradition. And I actually ended up, like you said, on a board for our local chapter because members had fallen out and stuff like that. So they were like, okay, join the board. And they over the years have kind of progressed into, they do a lot of things locally, SCI does. And so I'm a member of a lot of organizations, but SCI, the local chapters keep 70% of their money to do what they want with in their community or wherever they choose. But with that 70% funds, before I had even joined, my daughter was in the NRA YHEC program, which is the Youth Hunter Education Challenge. And the SCI chapter would donate to those kids so they could travel to competitions, or if they needed ammunition or, whatever they needed. And that was something the chapter board could choose to donate to. They also, some of the chapters in Colorado do food banks. They do feeds for wounded veterans. They, there's so many things that they do. I can't even tell you all of them, but there's so many things that they can choose. They do fly fishing things. We do a youth fishing derby. And so they get to choose that. And to me, that's really neat because I'm a member of Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, but all that money goes up there and you can apply for money to use in your area for a project. Yeah. So, it's kind of different. Whereas here, it's like we're raising money from our community for our community. And I love that about SCI.
See, I like that we do the same thing with DSC, Dallas Safari Club. The Northeast chapter that I'm involved with, it consists of New York all the way up to Maine. We're the largest chapter. So to do something in every state and, get people involved is really tough. It's really
Yeah.
tough. It's a big territory. Realistically, it should be broken up into 3 different territories. But
Yeah, I would think so, just because you're so far apart. And people are more active when they can interact in person, because
yeah,
that is something with all the organizations that I've seen is it with COVID and having to just meet virtually. It's nice because I can visit right now, but as far as activating people and getting them involved and engaged and making them feel included, it's kind of hard over Zoom.
it is. And I've been asked to, run a chapter in New York.
Uh-huh.
And I said, hell no. Yeah, being on a board is a lot of work. Running a chapter, that's well above my paid grade. I don't have the time for it.
You'd be surprised. You might not know how much leadership you have in you until you try.
Oh, that's not the issue. It's the amount of work involved that I'm not able to commit at this time.
Yeah. Well, and that's important, is to don't commit for something that you can't do. Because I'm on our local chapter board. I'm the regional representative for the state of Colorado, so I kind of oversee all the Colorado chapters, the SCI, and then as I'm on other committees. But I'm the chairman for the regional representatives, and you see people that say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this," and then they don't follow through. And if you can't, don't say you want to be the president if you can't do it, or don't bite off more than you can chew. If you can only help on the women's shooting day, then only help on women's shooting day. Don't say you're going to do all these things. So
that's exactly why I turned it down. I'm not willing to commit the time. But now before Mac Outdoors, you had other blogs and writing that you've been involved with. How did you get involved as an outdoor writer?
Oh gosh,
it's not something you grow up and say, I'm going to be an outdoor writer.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Mac Outdoors is my company. Mm-hmm. And then we started the podcast when my daughter was going away to school. I used to write a column for a publication, and it was about myself and my daughter. And then when she was growing up and going away to school, I was like, okay, so that column is basically done because my daughter's grown now, so can't write about that part. So we started the podcast because we had a lot of followers that kind of, they watched my daughter grow up. You watched my daughter grow up.
Your daughter grow up.
Wanted to know, okay, let's keep up with her. And so that's why she and I together started the podcast. And it was kind of a way to once a week stay in touch with each other. Uh-huh. What happened is, living in rural America, we don't have great internet. I'm happy that it's working today, so I can visit with you. We would record and the internet would glitch out, or different things would happen. And so I think we were able to get almost a year of episodes, and then it was just too much of a challenge for me editing, because like you, I do my own editing, I'm doing my own stuff, it's just Mia. And so we kind of put it on pause. And then I've had people, like I said, I like to be available to people who want help. And so if someone messages me on social media and they ask, how do I know what the length of pull is on a shotgun? I'm like, okay, I'll let you know. But then now I make a podcast out of it. And, how do I stay warm in the winter? Okay, I'm going to let you know, and I'm going to make a podcast about it. So that's kind of how the podcast started.
They were actually feeding you topics.
Yeah, they're feeding me topics. And if they have that question, I know other people have it as well.
Yes.
So I try to share it with other people. But that's how Mac Outdoors actually started. Before that, we just called the podcast Mac Outdoors because I already had Mac Outdoors is my umbrella for my writing and my business. I write and I freelance write. I'm a field editor for Shooting Industry magazine. I write for Mossy Oak Outdoors and a lot of different publications. And all of that goes through Mac Outdoors. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how Mac Outdoors is. But I got started writing because I was guiding hunts for my husband, and some of his friends would see me. We'd go out hunting for the day, and then we'd come back to the cabin, and I'd be in the corner on my laptop typing away. My grandpa at the time was about 84, I believe, and he was not a hunter. He was an Air Force gunner, and he was in war, but he was fascinated that I was out guiding hunters. And so he was like, you're doing what? And at his age and not being able to spend time with him, I would send him a letter like, this is what I did today. And those hunters would see me, in the corner, what are you doing? You're typing away. And I told him, I was telling him the story about what happened today. And a few of the hunters were like, well, can you send me the stories? And I was like, well, okay. So I'd email them the story. And more started asking for the stories. And I was like, I can't just email all this stuff. So I started my MiaAnstine.com. I started that and started just putting stories about my personal hunts, because I also didn't want to put somebody's story out there if they didn't want me to.
Yeah.
That kind of drew the attention of, did you and I meet on the Outdoor Channel social media first when you had See Me Hunt?
Geez, I know we first met through social media, and then we met at SHOT Show, which was kind of an awkward meeting to begin with. I remember you were on the steps by the media room, and I saw you there. I'm like, aren't you Mia?
And I was like, who is this? I didn't the outdoor world at the time, but I had, with the blog, I would put it on my personal blog, and then I would put it on the Outdoor Channel. They used to have their own social media.
Yeah.
And through that, the Outdoor Channel, they saw a review on the women's Under Armour. They saw different reviews like, hey, ladies, I found this, and this is what I saw. And they started publishing some of my reviews. And then another person heard one of my stories with my daughter, and, oh, we want you to write some stuff for us. And that's kind of how I got started writing.
It was a great storyline because it was ongoing.
Right. And I still could do that as an ongoing, but it's just, I don't know. It's different than it was like, here's this little girl and we're growing her as she goes into hunting, and her ups and downs and my ups and downs.
And she's a budding writer herself now.
So she's studying journalism. She initially wanted to be a news commentator. She loves Katie Pavlik and wanted to be Katie. And she and Katie are friends, actually. But once all the politics started going on in 2016, like the violent, aggressive politics, she just decided, no, she doesn't want to do that. She is a official photographer for several rodeos, and she does photojournalism for some different magazines and stuff like that. So she's kind of doing what I do, but a totally different angle and different style than what I do.
Well, I mean, she definitely got a leg up. She's met some unbelievable people in the outdoor industry, and she definitely got a head start through your work and through your blog. And she even interviewed Ted Nugent, hasn't she?
Yes, she interviewed Ted Nugent at the Golden Moose Awards, and that was, she's had some ups and downs in the outdoor industry. She's had some good experiences and some definite bad experiences that kind of turn her off with the outdoor industry. Mm-hmm. But Ted Nugent was one of the positive ones. And I've had some people are like, really? Like, they're so surprised. But she was told she could interview people, be in the green room at the Golden Moose Awards for the Outdoor Channel. And so she had 3 questions to ask them and all this. Well, then when it came down to that night, they said, you have 30 seconds with each person. She had 30 seconds with Sarah Palin, like 30 seconds. And so that really put a lot of pressure on her. And everything was just rush, rush, rush. And Katie Pavlich was there, and she knew Leah, and she was so excited to see her. And there are several different outdoor celebrities that were really nice to her, and they just kept herding everyone through. And Ted Nugent, he got his picture, then he comes and Leah asked him her question, and her question was, what does it feel like to be a mentor to the youth of America? And he asked all of them, and some of them had great answers. Some of them were like, whoa, I only have 30 seconds to think about this. And I think some of them didn't realize that they are mentors to the youth of America, that Ted was like, wow, he answered her, and then they're telling him, okay, go, your time is up. And he said, no, this little lady deserves my respect, and I'm going to visit with her. And so they ended up actually having a conversation, and he asked her about her hunts and her experience. And it was something where she was like, wow, that's cool that somebody stood up for her and just say, okay, dumb little girl, I'm going to go past to the next person.
He's very approachable, and he's very accommodating.
Yeah. And Shemaine was super nice as well. Both of them were just like, wow, look at this girl. And, both of them were just like, we hope that you do great things. And it was a neat experience for her.
I remember that show. That was like 2016.
Yeah. And that was the same show. You interviewed Taya Kyle, and I was going to say, you and I
I remember that. We crossed a lot of paths that year.
Like, oh, you're following us around. No, you're following us around.
And we actually, it's funny because we were going to cover Trump's press conference, but all our camera gear had to be at the in that room 3 hours ahead of time, so Secret Service can check the camera gear, make sure everything was above board. So I interviewed Taya with my cell phone. So, but
you just have to do what you got to do sometimes, right? I mean, that's kind of how it works with media. I don't think a lot of people realize that the work that goes behind the scenes, even for a podcast, everything that goes into it to make a show.
Well, you must really have some pull because you got into the green room. I only got to do the interviews on the red carpet.
Well, I guess I did make it to the red carpet, but I didn't make it to go to see Trump. So we didn't have to worry about our cameras being inspected. But really, those were great. I mean, it was so fun to do all of that. And I guess I feel like nostalgic today about it because we haven't been there for a couple of years. And hopefully this year we'll get some work done out there too.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get a lot accomplished, meet some new people, and get some good interviews in. And I'm kind of pulling away from having the outdoor personality from the Outdoor Channel and whatnot on my covers because I think we're limited to the exposure of the people who know them. So I'm moving more. Obviously, I have Travis Tritt on the cover of my winter issue. I had Ted Nugent on my fall issue. And I got a big one coming up that I'm working on. It's not confirmed yet, but I think I'm going to have Blake Shelton on my spring edition.
That would be cool.
It'd be really cool if I had him and Gwen Stefani on the cover.
But he's a pretty personable guy too. He's pretty neat. With Nissan, they took us on they call it the Nissan Titan Adventure, and they came to Colorado, and we took the trucks to a few different locations, but the finale was meeting Blake Shelton and going to one of his concerts, and he's a pretty neat guy.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
If you can interview him, you'll have a really good experience with that, I would imagine.
I'm looking forward to it because you know what, Travis was such a pleasure to interview. There was not an ounce of ego in this guy, and just so accommodating. There's not enough good things I could say about him.
That's cool. It's neat to meet people that they're people, and that's awesome.
Yeah, but so we're growing, we're expanding. I had the pleasure of interviewing Bo Jackson and of course Joe Mantegna that have more universal appeal. And not to say I don't love the people in the outdoor industry from the Outdoor Channel and whatnot. I do. Every one of them are friends. They're cool, and if I could help them, I will.
I think something with that, and you saying that you're not just focusing on them, is the outdoor industry. We're very small, and I know when we're around each other, we think like we're the whole world, but really we're very small. And I try to explain this to local kids here that grew up around hunting and stuff like that, is we're such a small percentage of the whole country that you have to realize like what the non-hunters see and what anti-hunters see. And if you want to make an impact, what you're doing is going to make a broader impact than just focusing on us. And so here in Colorado, I sit on the Colorado Outdoor Partnership Program on the Colorado Cattlemen's Wildlife Committee, and I'm on a lot of the I'm on the Sportsman's Roundtable. But that's something where we work with like the recreationists, the anglers, like we're working with everybody, and you kind of see that big picture of how we all go together, and you're going to make a greater impact if you go beyond your little niche.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was a great way to get started. You know, a lot of friends stepped up and, you know, were interviewed for the cover, and, it gave me a little, it definitely gave me a foot up, and I appreciate their assistance.
Yeah, it's pretty neat to see your growth as well in the industry. You said it's been fun to see my progression, but you've been progressing too the whole time. And especially when you started the magazine, it's like, wow, that's pretty neat, because I was actually really surprised. I didn't know you were going to do that, but it's been neat to read it and see how that's evolving too.
I didn't know I was going to do it either.
Quit.
The dog has a cold. Does the emu come in the house too, or he's
only the dogs come in the house. We had the sheep that I have. The kids rescued that sheep, and it was bottle fed since it was a baby. But when it was little, it used to come in the house, and then it was like, okay, you're big enough to just get out.
Let's draw the line somewhere.
Yeah,
it's funny. I was actually talking about that the other day. My grandfather, I live in a regular residential neighborhood, and my grandfather and my aunts and uncles were all, residential area. So I went to visit my grandfather one day, and he had a sheep in his backyard. And I was a little kid. I was all excited. I'm like, oh, you got a sheep? And I'm petting it and following it around the yard and whatnot. And the next time I went over, the sheep was gone. I'm like, oh, what'd you do with the sheep? He said, oh, I had to bring it to a farm where it had more room to run. He ate it.
Yep, that's usually how that works.
I didn't grow up around that, so it was all foreign to me.
Yeah, too funny.
And now, now I hunt for my food.
And now
it's good to be able to share your experiences with people. And, a lot of my friends don't hunt, but they love for me to cook them wild game.
Yeah.
So I'm actually hosting a wild game dinner this spring.
Cool. Is that part of DSC?
No, this is part of American Outdoor News. It's going to be the first annual American Outdoor Sportsman Dinner. I am co-sponsoring it with Chef Foz, who's pretty well known. He travels around the country and cooks for wild sportsman's dinners and whatnot. So I'm excited about that too. It should be a lot of fun.
Very cool. Do you have any big hunts coming up?
No, my season has been such a disappointment, because I had a hunting club that I was part of for the past 12 years or so. And we had 600 acres. It was a 60-acre lake. We had a archery range, a rifle range, and quad trails. And we just had a close bond with all the members and friends that were involved, and the owner sold the property. So all of us were kind of displaced this year, and everyone kind of went their separate ways. And it's been a very unsettling season.
Yeah. And that's something that you were asking if we're still guiding, and we had done private land stuff and whatnot, and we've had that happen as well. One of our landowners, where we did the youth turkey hunts, it's very near where we are, and we would have put an offer in to buy it, and they didn't even tell us they were selling it or anything. We had already booked hunts.
Oh, wow.
And we didn't know till like the day after their sale went through when we see people hauling equipment in and out, and we're like, what's going on? And, oh yeah, we sold that place. So that's hard when you're a hunter and you rely on either, like you're saying, like a club or a lease. Or I have a lot of friends that have lost their leases in the past year.
So I actually had a friend of mine, he has a ranch in Pennsylvania. He's like, why don't you come up and guide? You could hunt while you're here. So I did a couple of weeks in October, and it was fun. You know, I got to spend more time outdoors. I didn't get much hunting time in, but it was fun to be, you know, in the lodge and taking people out.
Yeah.
And now I'm going back after Thanksgiving for a couple of weeks.
Cool.
You know, it'll be fun. It's always fun to be in the outdoors.
Yeah, for sure. To me, the outdoors is kind of healing, and it helps you reset. With as busy as we were this summer, one of our friends came up to hunt and just was coming to hunt, and we were like, well, let's all hunt together, because if we wouldn't have done that and scheduled the days to go with him, we probably wouldn't have had time to be out there. And it's just like, you can just reset and relax and enjoy life instead of being in the middle of everything that's going on. And really enjoyable. And we've actually done that twice this year. And literally both times, if we hadn't scheduled that with friends, we probably wouldn't have made time to get out.
And that's always
for us. Like,
yeah. I find that to be a big part of the hunting for me, not just being out in the field and filling your tag. It's spending time with friends and family and swapping lies around the fireplace, you know. Yeah,
I mean, in catching up, because we haven't seen each other in person, so it was pretty cool to have somebody come out and see us and catch up from what we would have had dinner at SHOT Show or dinner at NRA or wherever we were going to be. And none of those conventions have happened, so it's like, okay, let's catch up in the woods.
Yeah, NRA canceled the week before the show. That was a big disappointment.
Yeah, and actually, that was the one friend that came. It was right after, because we were both figured we would be at NRA, and then we would hunt the week after NRA, and then that canceled, and it was like, okay, well, we won't have an NRA recap, but we'll talk about something.
Yeah, but hey, I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. I'm looking forward to the show season. Which, you know, I'm going to Dallas Safari Club, I'm going to SCI, I'm going Great American Outdoor Show. So those are all on right now, but we'll play it by ear. Yeah.
Do you have any holiday plans? Do you have game feeds for Thanksgiving or Christmas or anything like that?
This is a very strange year for me. My brother moved. He's no longer in the state. And so Thanksgiving, it's just going to be me, my father, and my son.
Wow.
So, I actually just made dinner reservations. We're going to go out to a restaurant for the first time ever and try something different.
Yeah, at least you guys will have, the three of you will be together. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. What are you doing?
This is going to be my daughter's first year to host Thanksgiving. So part of her growing, and she's having Thanksgiving at her house. So she's got her schedule, and I asked her, what do you want me to bring and all that. And we'll see how it goes. It's pretty fun to sit back and watch and see how it turns out. But that's our plan. And we always, when I host it, I usually invite like you and if you lived close, like you, your father, and your son, like just the three of you, you guys are kind of orphans. And that's what I always say, like Thanksgiving to me, I always invite the orphans to come, because then we can just all be together. And so this year, having it at her house, I'm actually making some dinner to take to some of my orphans that it's not my Thanksgiving to invite them. So instead, I'm taking them some dinners. So,
you know, growing up, it was always the same. Like Christmas would be at my aunt's house.
Mm-hmm.
And you never knew who was going to be there. There were easily 50 people every year.
Yeah.
And it was always, oh, you have no place to go. Just, you know, come on with us, you know, and, you know, between cousins, uncles and whatnot, you know, we have a big family to begin with. And then the strays, and it was always a huge event and great memories.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just fun. So I think I will miss that this year, but it also, like I said, is fun to watch her figure out how to do Thanksgiving. So
Next step.
yeah, it is. And that's it. As she's like figuring it out. Hey, stop it. As she's figuring it out, it reminds me of when I had mine, when I made my first Thanksgiving. So it's pretty neat to watch it.
That's great. Well, on that note, I think we're running out of time, and I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, a happy holiday season, and a safe and prosperous hunting season. So
Thanks for having me on, Chris.
it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks again, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Outdoors and American Outdoor News.